All right, all right. I know you've all been waiting for my take on the Steven Crowder Daily Wire contract situation. I know. Everyone wants to know, what's the Sultan of Smug think about Steven Crowder's media deal, his contract, his golden handcuffs, as he called them, that he summarily refused, turned down, and said, "No, thank you, sir," and then proceeded to call out, not by name, but everybody kind of assumed, if he left the Blaze, and then he didn't, and then, he has this other media contract that he turned down. Well, who's the other player other than Blaze? It's probably the Daily Wire. And people were stunned at first. Actually, you know what? I don't want to get into the background yet. Why am I talking about this? Well, this is really none of my business. This is inside baseball stuff. But I've been enjoying over the last couple of days watching the discussion about this unfold. I've developed my own opinion. At first, it was funny. It was like, just kind of drama. But first, I watched Crowder's video go right after it went up. Then I think I watched, maybe did I watch something about Tim Pool talking about it? Maybe, maybe not. Then I watched in full Jeremy Boring's response when he came out and doxed himself and said, yes, that contract that Crowder was showing off, I sent it to him. I made that offer to him. And I watched that in full. And now I see, over at Night's Watch, Shad Brooks has put out an over 3-hour, breakdown of the contract. And I just think, you know what, this is getting out of hand. I have my opinion. I want to get it on the record. Because this is fun. There wasn't anything super pressing going on today anyway, so I'm going to take my time and not break down the contract. You can watch that elsewhere. You can watch Crowder. You can watch Jeremy Boring. Heck, you can watch Shad. I mean, I haven't watched his video, but if it's 3 hours, he probably goes pretty in depth into the contract. I don't know if there is a full version of the contract, floating around the internet. Probably not. But I'll just come out and say it. I do think that Crowder appears to be a bit nuts. Not in a bad way, but I think that his heart's in the right place. But I'm much more sympathetic, I think, to Jeremy Boring, as much as I don't like him, or Ben Shapiro. I'm not a fan of the Daily Wire, folks. I remember way back when the Mercers first funded the Daily Wire, when Shapiro was starting to try and spread his wings and move away from Steve Bannon and Breitbart, way back in 2016. So I have been aware of the Daily Wire and all of their goings-on from the very beginning. I remember when Ben Shapiro launched Daily Wire Plus, and it was kind of a silly thing at the time. It's like, oh, you can pay to turn off the banner ads on my website. And I thought, God, who the hell would ever do that? Now they have like 9,000 monthly paying subscribers. Of course, they've added a lot of content since then, but still, I thought it was quite silly at the time, but, I have to applaud them. They have built a business, which is what that is. And what I respect about Jeremy Boring is he doesn't hide that. In fact, that's his defense. Steven Crowder, very passionate. He has ideological reasons why this contract bothered him. But from a business perspective, if you were thinking about this as a money-making venture, if I put myself in the shoes of the Daily Wire, wanting to bring on this very expensive talent, and I also give what's-his-name credit, Jeremy Boring, for calling them talent. That was something that, in the news business used to be considered gauche and untoward, because, no, the news people, it has nothing to do with talent. It just has to do with, how skilled and factual they are as journalists. It was Roger Ailes who I think first was willing to publicly refer to the hosts of Fox as talent, and Boring has continued that. And there's a certain honesty in that I appreciate. He's not trying to hide the ball. Yes, the Daily Wire is trying to cater to people who want to hear a certain message, but at the end of the day, it is a business that exists to make money. That is the primary goal. And so I disagree with Crowder's take that the Daily Wire was just trying to force YouTube censorship onto Crowder's show. I don't think that that is a fair characterization of the contract at all. And honestly, even though I am not fond of Jeremy Boring and Ben Shapiro, it was my impression up until this point that Steven Crowder, on a personal level, was friends with these people. From what I understand, Ben Shapiro was Steven Crowder's first attorney, and Steven Crowder was Ben Shapiro's first client, right when he got out of law school. So these guys go back a long time. And so when I saw Crowder come out and just completely trash, not by name, but we all knew, hey, he's talking about Benji Shapiro, come out and trash one of his oldest friends in this entire business. I thought that's a pretty bold move. He must feel like he's on pretty solid footing. And to be honest, I don't think he is. I'm inclined to agree with Boring, not because I think that it's a great thing to enforce YouTube censorship. That's not what he's doing. If you look at the contract, and I think that Crowder, in his video, I kind of think that he mischaracterized it a bit. I don't want to be I don't want to come in here and just say, hey, everything Jeremy Boring says is correct. I'm not here to defend the guy. I'm no special pleader for these folks. But if a part of the contract is, hey, we get the revenue, we're going to pay you up front, and then we're going to get the revenue from your YouTube ad revenue. We're going to get your YouTube ad revenue, and we're going to get money from sponsorships that your show is going to get. All that money is going to go directly to us, and then we're going to pay you some kind of salary. It makes sense to me then for the company to put protections in there for themselves, because there's such a big risk of YouTube demonetization. And of course, Crowder's already fully demonetized, so this section basically doesn't apply to him, because they would just deduct this off the top. You would take this off the top line, because Crowder is never going to be monetized on YouTube. But if he were someone who was monetized on YouTube, that is money that would be going to Daily Wire, that they would be making. And so therefore, if they lost that later on down the road, they don't want to still be paying their talent based off of YouTube ad revenue that they are no longer generating. The way it works when you're an employee is you make your marginal product in a competitive market. And so what that means is that Crowder's never going to make more, as long as he's got a smart employer, than what he pulls in. And so if the revenue that Crowder's going to generate for this company, or any media company, is volatile, they're going to want to put protections in there for themselves so that they don't have to pay him based off of the most, whatever the highest revenue that he possibly could bring in, if he's not going to bring in that revenue all the time. Now, Crowder feels that, they're an employer. That's the risk you take. When you hire an employee, you give them a guaranteed rate, and, maybe sometimes they pull their weight in the company, and other times they don't. Well, if that were the case, if you wanted them to price in the risk of you not being able to pull your weight and to bring in revenue and generate revenue for the company, then they would just have to make you an offer that is much lower, that prices in that risk. And so you shouldn't be offended like a child at a business contract like this. If you feel like you're worth more than, if you feel like you should be paid $50 million over 4 years, which, by the way, Crowder didn't disclose what the top line number was. Jeremy did. I think that does make a difference. People are saying, well, the top line number doesn't matter. It's the principle of it. Well, no, because I'm sure that Jeremy would be very happy to get rid of all of those restrictions and all of those caveats on Crowder's salary if, let's say, instead of $50 million over 4 years, it was something like $30 million. You see how that works? Everything like this is negotiable. If Crowder hated all this, he could have probably gone back to the Daily Wire and said, I don't like any of these conditions, any of these things saying, oh, I have to, and one of the other things was, like, Crowder has to show up for work 4 days a week. And if he misses a day, he can make it up, on one of the other days of the week. There are 7 days in the week. And, well, realistically, 5 days in the, in the media week. I don't think they wouldn't want him putting out a show like Saturday or Sunday. But Monday through Friday, they're saying, hey, put out at least 4 shows. You need to hit on 4 out of those 5 days. You need to put out a show. And then, by the way, 4 weeks vacation. 4 weeks paid vacation. That's twice what a normal person gets. And so he's got 28 vacation days he can use, and basically 1 vacation day a week, because he's not working 5 days a week. He's working 4 days a week. So Crowder's all mad that, I lose $100,000 if I'm sick. It's like, well, no, jackass. If you miss a day early in the week, again, according to them, if you miss a day early in the week, you can make it up later. This doesn't sound like very strict to me. This sounds extremely favorable, and considering that these guys were your personal friends for like a decade or more, over a decade, 15 years probably, I would think you would have been able to work something out with each other. So, at the end of the day, I can see, maybe for someone else, maybe someone who's not Steven Crowder, seeing a contract like this, with the same format, but with a different top-line number, and finding that very unfavorable. And the reason why that contract might be very unfavorable is because media personalities do not generate a lot of revenue, okay? The digital media space is not somewhere where employees are very profitable. BuzzFeed had to find this out, Vice had to find this out, and the same is true for conservative media. There's a lot of people who are willing to talk their mouth off. And if there really were that much money in employing these people, there are enough of these media companies, they would compete for them. And if anyone's capable of getting a favorable deal, it would be Steven Crowder, who is, he's the king. He's number one right now. And like I said, and I'm sure this is true for anyone, these guys would have probably been happy to get rid of the caveats for a lower salary. They probably would be willing to pay you a flat rate if it was low enough to where they knew they weren't going to lose money. But if you want to make more, it's going to have to be a little bit of a give and take thing. It's going to have to be, okay, well then when you're able to bring in more money, i.e. when you're not suspended from YouTube or these other social media sites, well then you're going to make more then. And when you are suspended from there, and when sponsors do want to boycott you, like they boycott, for example, Tucker Carlson, the #1 cable show, he gets boycotted by tons of sponsors. Nobody wants to advertise on his show other than MyPillow. So Tucker Carlson, despite being #1, despite having all these viewers, Fox isn't really able to monetize his show that well. And so despite drawing a lot of viewers, Tucker is not as valuable of a host as you would think. So that's my take on this. This is just basic economics, I think. I don't think that Jeremy Boring and Ben Shapiro want to screw over their good friend Steven Crowder, of all people. I think that they've built their business that they have by being shrewd. And that's what this is. Part of the reason is because people said to me, early on this channel, which of course I'm not an influencer. I have no intention of being that. This channel's always been like a diary for me. If I wanted to be like these people, I would have done very different things. I would have done the whole webcam and ring light, and I would have worn makeup, and probably would have cross-dressed or something to get more viewers, and would have done things like, invest in a microphone. I didn't do any of that. I never have, because I've never had any illusions about, talking on YouTube for a living. It's never been a goal of mine, because I've never thought it was a realistic career path. It's so oversaturated, and the people who are good at it aren't really monetizable. And so I'm never going to waste my time, putting a lot of effort into a YouTube channel, because even if I build something up, I'm not going to make a lot of money. even if I did gain a decent subscriber base, and I, like Crowder talks about, if I was some up and comer and I decided to make a deal with one of these companies, you're not going to get a very favorable contract. And it's not because these companies just suck. These companies want to make money. And if the content creators made them money, they would give them very favorable contracts. But the reason why they don't get favorable contracts is because it's not very favorable to the company to hire these people. Everyone laughed at Vice and BuzzFeed when they had to have all those layoffs and, the digital media bubble collapsed and the venture capital left. But they act like this isn't also true for the right side of the aisle. So, in conclusion, talk is cheap. That really sums up my thoughts on this whole situation. Now, if you're Steven Crowder, talk isn't cheap. Talk is worth apparently $50 million over 4 years. But I don't think I'll have any other thoughts on this matter in the future. So, with that said, I will see you folks back here tomorrow.